And then I heard this gentleman as the keynote presentation come up, and I had that moment of sobriety, that click where I realized that I needed to make a shift. And this is my story, and this is where I am. These are all the amazing things that have happened over the last 12 months that wouldn't have happened if I had made that ultimate decision 12 months ago. In the audience, there were 3 other people who were at various stages of planning their own demise. And
Wow.
they reached out to this woman and said, "We need help." So by one gentleman being brave and sharing his story, he saved the life of one other person who then found the bravery to speak about her experience and share her story. And that changed 3 more people's lives. And who knows where that ripple goes? Because that's as far as I've tracked it.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And very privileged to have Mr. Sean Tyler Foley with me today. He is an actor, an author, and you also help people with public speaking. I guess you could probably help me today.
I'd say that you're doing pretty good, Kyle, and it's an absolute pleasure to be on today.
So, you started acting when you were 6?
True story. True story. I was very, very lucky that I grew up in a decent size metropolitan area, but a small enough theater scene that you didn't need a lot of experience to get in and break in. So when I was 6 years old, I had the joy and the privilege of playing Tiny Tim for professional staging of A Christmas Carol.
Oh, wow. And then took off from there, huh?
Took off from there, man. Once you get a taste of that crowd, there's no looking back. And the worst of it is too, like, I love a crowd, and I'm not picky about what I'm doing to get in front of them. So I've been on stage, film, television, played in a couple of bands, played a couple of different instruments in those bands. I play keyboard, play drums. I was even in a marching band and played tuba. So I, I don't care what I'm doing as long as people are looking, cheering, and clapping.
Maybe you can give some advice to my oldest grandson. He took up tuba this year.
My first advice to him is don't fall asleep inside your tuba case. It looks comfortable until you get locked inside.
Now, you've taken what you've learned, and I guess you've kind of turned it into a business, and now you help people with public speaking, and tell me about that, and tell me about the book that you wrote.
Yeah, so the book actually came from the training courses. Actually, one of the guests that you had on your show recently, Andrea Petro, who is a client of mine that has come through the various stages of the workshops. But I, as you had pointed out, had been performing and speaking in front of people since I was 6 years old. So that's going on 4 decades now of public speaking and performance. And so I have been asked a lot by people, how do you do it? How do you get up on stage and just talk? And honestly, for a long while, I didn't really understand how I could do it or why I could do it. And so I started to kind of reverse engineer why I didn't have stage fright the way that other people had stage fright. I've had stage fright before, but it's a rare occurrence for me. I can actually count on a single hand the number of times I've had stage fright over the past 40 years. But I understand where the root of it is. And so I really wanted to help people understand that they're not actually afraid of public speaking. And that's usually the first thing, is that I hear so many people say, "Oh, I'm terrified to speak in public." I'm like, "No, you're not. Have you ever ordered food at a restaurant?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Then you're not afraid to speak in public, and you're not afraid to speak to strangers if you didn't know your wait staff. You were in a public place. You talked to somebody who you didn't know. You asked for something that you wanted, and it came to your table, and you got it." So this notion that we're afraid to speak in public, or we're afraid to speak to strangers, or we're afraid to ask for what we want, all null and void if you've ever been to a restaurant. But what most people do struggle with is a very common fear, including myself, and that's a fear of public judgment. And particularly when you have a platform where somebody is looking at you, or where you are front and center, there's this tendency to project what their thoughts are without actually knowing. And a lot of times we project in the negative, and it's that fear of public judgment that most people really get tripped up on. And then that leads to anxiety and can lead to stage fright. So stage fright's a real thing. People can experience it. The reality is most people are not actually afraid to speak in public. And so when I had developed all of these training courses, the evolution for me was to take them and transcribe them and create my #1 best-selling book, The Power to Speak Naked. And that's kind of how that came to be, so that there was an option for people to be introduced to the material and to work on it on their own before coming and hanging out in a seminar with me for 2.5 days.
Well, you might think that I'm crazy because that's kind of what I've done for a long time is public speaking. And I have a problem with stuttering, which I work very hard not to stutter, but sometimes I'll catch myself doing it. And I know what you mean about the judgment. I'm afraid of making mistakes and people are going to be making fun of me and that kind of thing. I mean, tried to get started a while ago and I had my brain fart where I couldn't even remember your name. And I've been saying it for the last 2 days. You run across people with similar problems?
Oh yeah. I mean, and they're not uncommon. You know, everybody has some kind of struggle or issue, and a lot of people get very caught up. And you know, I've worked with some people with heavy stutters. I've worked with a couple of people with speech impediments. I have had a client that legitimately was actually afraid of public speaking, like to the point where she was almost agoraphobic and would not go outside because she was afraid of public engagement. So that's somebody who legitimately is afraid of public speaking, and we worked on overcoming that. And the funny thing is a lot of the key to it, and you'd pointed out, right? Because we're all conscious of what our quirks and our tics are. For me, I have certain filler words that I use, even though I'm conscious of them, they still creep in, particularly when I'm struggling to find words. And, you know, that's usually where everybody's going to use their filler words. And I've been doing this for a long time. So there's kind of that preconceived expectation that I'm going to be able to be on the top of my game. And I have off days too. And what I have found is that one of the best ways to overcome some of those anxieties, particularly when we're focusing on our flaws, is to reverse that and to start focusing on our strengths. Like, what do we have to bring to the table? Because the other thing is, if you've been presented an opportunity to speak in front of an audience, and regardless of the platform, whether that's at a boardroom meeting or on a stage or on a medium like this where we get to talk essentially one-on-one, you and I are going to have this wonderful conversation, Kyle, but there's, you know, countless hundreds of other people who are listening to this in the sphere of the unknown, you know, out in the great cyber sphere. So they are part of our conversation without me being able to see them, but they're there, and they wouldn't be there if you hadn't have brought me on, and if you weren't an expert in what you were doing. You know, regardless of where our conversation goes today, whether we go from comedy to cosplay to the paranormal to positive vibes, it doesn't matter where we go with this conversation, right? You and I have a rapport, and we're going to try and bring value to your audience. But you brought me on because I was an expert in what I do. And you're an expert in what you do, and the people come back and listen regularly to the vibes because they want to be entertained, or they find something valuable in what you're providing. So you are the expert. And when people get to know you and know you as a human, they don't really care about those quirks or eccentricities or any of the rest of it. They just want to be part of what you're doing. And I think that's the key for people to realize, is that if you've been given a platform, you are the expert.
Mhm.
Sure, there's probably other people who do it bigger, better, faster, stronger, brighter, whatever, right? There's going to be people with more experience than you. There's going to be people who have made more money than you. But there's also the people on the other end of that spectrum that haven't. And you can focus all of your attention on what you don't have, or you can focus your attention on what you do have. And what you do have is a captive audience who your only goal is to leave them better than you found them. And if you're able to do that, even if it's just one bit of advice, they just take one takeaway from what you present in whatever amount of time you've been given to entertain them, then that's a something. So you are the expert if you've been given a platform, because we don't ask second best to come up. We ask the best.
Right.
The other thing is the audience is on your side. I promise you right now, Kyle, there's not a single person who has downloaded this episode, who is listening to us talk right now, who thought to themselves, well, I'm going to download the vibes today, and I hope Kyle screws up this guest name. I hope this Tyler guy has absolutely nothing to say. I hope both of them stumble over their words. I hope Kyle's stutter comes out on full force today, because that would make my day, right? Like, nobody thinks that, right? They come, they want to be entertained. And the other thing is too, if you're providing good value, we're all going to make mistakes. But if you're providing value, the mistakes get hidden in the gems and the gold that we dig up, right? And then they're forgotten, and the takeaways are the things that stay. And so as long as you're providing somebody with value, then you're doing your job. So you are the expert, the audience is on your side. And if you can embrace those two things as part of a mindset to develop, overcoming this fear of public judgment becomes a lot easier.
I try to connect with the audience. I put myself in their shoes. I'm a person who grew up in school. I got picked on, and I had no self-esteem, but I was a very friendly person, very outgoing person. I've always been that way since I was a little kid. My mom tells the story of when she took me to Kmart, and she turned around and I was gone. And she looked all over the store for me. And here I'm probably like 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And she found me talking to the janitor. I just saw this guy and went up and struck up a conversation with him. I've always been that way. I never meet a stranger. I guess I've always wanted people to like me. And unfortunately, there were people that didn't, and they gave me hell and made me not want to go to school and made me hate myself. It caused me not only that problem, but there was mental illness. There was depression. I've told the story a million times, but I was molested when I was a little kid. So here's all these things that are driving against my self-esteem. And I know there's people out there that feel the same way. And I want to help them. I want you to break out of your shell. I did. I was a preacher at one point in my life, and most scared I ever was. And mind you, I had preached in front of people in jail and to the children's church, and no problem whatsoever. But I got up in front of my peers and was doing a sermon during a New Year's Eve special kind of thing. We stayed up all night. Different of us that had our ministries would get up and preach, and I sweated. I shook. Everything you could think of. I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, am I going to be stuttering over my words again? And I try so hard not to. Am I going to screw up what I'm saying? I had a lot of health issues through the years, and it kind of screws with my mind at times. It's always in the back of my head, but I don't give up. I keep doing this, and I'm going to keep doing this. Somebody out there can identify with that. I want to help them.
Well, and I think that's the key, is understanding that you do have a message, and it doesn't need to be for everybody. You have people who need to hear it. And as long as you have the bravery to come out and say it, those people will eventually get your message. You know, one of the things that I talk about in all my seminars, one of the reasons I worked with Andrea as much as I did, is I like to say the thing you're afraid to say is very likely what your ideal audience needs to hear. And it's when you can take the brave leap of faith and say that thing that is hard to talk about up front, right? You and I have a commonality that neither one of us would have been aware of if you hadn't have just said that you were molested as a small child. I was, I had 3 different incidents of being sexually assaulted as a youth. The first time I was 12 years old, and I had a babysitter who, you know, took a significant advantage of me. And then I was later assaulted by 2 classmates when I was 14. And then when I got into my own, you know, adulthood, I had a boss that I worked for that that was definitely inappropriate at work, and actually locked me into a file room, insisting that I have sex with her before I could leave. And none of those things worked the way that those people wanted them to. But these are the kind of things where if you don't have the bravery to say that, then there's no reason for me to share my story. Right? But you having the conviction and the ability to step forward and say, this is the experience that I had. Your experience is going to be completely, totally different than my experience. But we have an understanding and a common ground that we can begin to build on. And that's why I think it's so important to say the things that we're afraid to say, because that's how we build community. That's how we build understanding. That's how we build empathy and connection amongst ourselves. You know, you and I do not have to agree on all things, right? Like, we can have drastically different political standpoints. We can have drastically different views on religion or whatever. Ironically, that's something that you and I have in common too. One of the first things that I took at school was theology, because I was originally going to become a youth minister and pastor, and that was a vocation that was not for me. But I definitely loved my theology studies. I'm fascinated by religion in all of its forms throughout the globe. So, but you know, I think it's that key connector when we can openly and honestly discuss our experiences, that we have that ability to connect with one another and really transcend some of these biases that naturally are going to creep in. And I think that's the real key. And one of the reasons why my book is called The Power to Speak Naked, because I think there's a power in speaking our raw, naked truth. I think that's when you have the best connection, the best engagement with your audience. I think that's when transformation can truly happen, is when we free ourselves of the shackles of the imagined consequences of our words and actually start to find out what the reality is when we speak these truths. And when you are the brave one to say it, that's when you become a leader of the people who have had similar experiences, because they look to you because you were the one to step up first.
That's the fascinating thing about what I do. Is there, even if there's just one person out there that can identify with the same things that I'm talking about, it may be a message they need to hear. It could be the difference between them going home and ending themselves that day. Or
yeah, it quite literally can be the difference between life and death. And I have seen it time and time and time again, where you have one brave soul speak up and it quite literally saves other people. I was speaking at an event, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago now, called Life by Design. And the organizer of it is a phenomenal human by the name of Bailey Yates. And she had put together just a powerhouse of speakers. I was the weakest presenter at this event. And that's saying something, because I don't mind saying that I am an incredible public speaker. Like I quite literally wrote the book on public speaking. A book on public speaking, not necessarily the definitive volume, but a good one. And I present well, but I was honored that I was, not necessarily the top billed presenter. And the gentleman who was the keynote came out and gave a talk called the 10-minute time machine. Phenomenal, phenomenal presentation. And he talked about his struggle with mental health and substance abuse, and how he had spent the better part of a decade trying to find the right combination of alcohol and medication that would end his life in a way that would be accidental enough that he would still get a payout from his life insurance. And he wanted that because he felt that his children would be better off in the world without him. And he needed it to be accidental because, ironies of ironies, he actually sells life insurance.
Wow.
And so for a couple of reasons, this is a hard thing for him to talk about because, he sells life insurance. You shouldn't, right? Be talking about A, mental health struggles, or B, trying a suicide in particular, and trying to figure out a way to end your life so that your insurance still pays out. So it's a very, very difficult topic for him to talk about. The way that he presents it is hands down the greatest keynote presentation that I have ever seen. And I've seen some really good ones. I have seen some unbelievably memorable presentations. But in this instance, he makes you laugh, he makes you cry, and he makes you think. And that combination there is always a great presentation. And in it, the reason he titled it the 10-minute time machine, he talks about the day that he got the combination right. He had this routine, and he'd actually not had custody of his children for about 1.5 to 2 years. And there was a family event, and he had faked sobriety just well enough that his ex-wife and her new boyfriend trusted him just enough to let the kids stay at his house that evening, just because she needed a break. They needed some time to themselves. It'd been a busy, month or day or whatever. And can he take the kids? And he agreed, and he took the kids, and he put them to bed. He was gonna stay clean, and he put them to bed, and then he drifted off himself. And then when he woke up, what happens? He's into his routine, right? Where are the pills? Where are the booze? Let's get Rice Krispie Square into my stomach so that my stomach can handle this toxicity that I'm about to pump it with. And that was his routine. And then he had this brief cognitive realization that the kids might be in the house. And then he didn't know if he was being delusional, because he was often had paranoid delusions in these states. And he's like, the kids can't be here. My ex would never let them be here. And he was going through this, and he would go in and he would check the room, and they would be there. And then he was like, no, this has got to be a thing. I've got to do more medication, more alcohol to make this hallucination go away. And he ended up getting the combination right. His son woke up in the early hours of the morning, just when he was about to see the light. And his son leaned over him on the couch as he's literally taking his last breath. And he says, "Daddy, are you okay?" And at that point, he had this snap realization that he couldn't let it happen this way. He couldn't die in front of his kids. And it gave him enough will and spark of life to fight. He ended up being legally dead. Quite literally with his last breath, he told his son to get help. And his son phoned 911. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics came. He was technically dead when they arrived. No heartbeat, no respirations. They gave him CPR, got him to the hospital, pumped his stomach, resuscitated him. And he has been sober ever since that day. And he calls his talk the 10-minute time machine, because if he was given a time machine where he could go back and change just 10 minutes of his life, you would think that those would be the 10 minutes that he would change. He would take it back. He would change something, shuffle one card here or switch a domino so that it didn't fall. And then he tells everybody he wouldn't do it, that he needed that he thought he'd hit rock bottom a couple of times, but he hadn't. That was his rock bottom. And he needed to know in his soul, not just in his mind and not even in his heart, but in his soul, that his children were not better off without him in the world, that they needed him there, and he needed to be there for them. Like they needed each other. He needed them, they needed him, and they were a reason for him to be sober and to live a good and healthy life. And the great news is I know this gentleman, and he has since remarried. He has an amazing wife. They have an amazing life, an amazing relationship. They work on it every day, and he has stayed sober now, I believe, for 6 years, I feel is the number. And the power of him sharing that story is, in the room at that event was a woman who had been gifted a ticket by her friend. And this was a weekend event. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And she had every intention on Monday to go up to this spot in the mountains, because this was a mountain retreat. And she had picked out a spot that overlooked a lake on her favorite peak. And she had spent the majority of the week polishing and prepping her gun. And she was going to go up and she was going to take herself out of this world on the Monday following this event. Well, she heard this gentleman speak and realized that he was basically speaking directly to her. And she decided to reach out and get some help. And so she reached out to the event organizer, and then she reached out to some resources that were offered to her. Fast forward a year, she's sober. She's found a boyfriend. She's having an amazing relationship, and is thrilled that she didn't make the wrong decision. And she wants to speak at the event and tell her story. And wow. Bailey agreed to do it. She's like, absolutely, come and tell your story. And she said, a year ago, I was sitting right here. This was my plan. This is what happened. I heard this one woman come up and talk about her struggles with suicidal thoughts and mental health and bullying. And I identified with that. And then I heard this gentleman as the keynote presentation come up, and I had that moment of sobriety, that click where I realized that I needed to make a shift. And this is my story, and this is where I am. These are all the amazing things that have happened over the last 12 months that wouldn't have happened if I had made that ultimate decision 12 months ago. In the audience, there were 3 other people who were at various stages of planning their own demise. Wow. And they reached out to this woman and said, we need help. So by one gentleman being brave and sharing his story, he saved the life of one other person who then found the bravery to speak about her experience and share her story. And that changed 3 more people's lives. And who knows where that ripple goes, because that's as far as I've tracked it. But I happen to know that one to be a reality and proof that life happens for us, not to us, that all of these events are in place so that we can learn from what is going on. And we're never presented with things that we can't handle. It may seem like it at the time. It can feel daunting. It can feel overwhelming. But, we are a resilient species. And there is really nothing that we can't handle. If we're willing to open up, to discuss it, to ask for help with humility and a humbleness to recognize that, we can't do it all ourselves. And to find that support group. But again, how do you find them? You got to speak first. Yep. You got to find that power to speak up and say what has happened, so that you can find those people who A, needed to hear what you had to say, and B, who may be able to help you, because there's 2 targets there, and both of them come into your life if you start to find the bravery to open up and share.
Wow. I can hear certain people in my life that would be telling me right now, why would you tell that story? That's embarrassing. Well, you're making a fool of yourself. I don't look at it that way. The only reason why I'm so transparent is because of the situation you just talked about. You never know who's out there.
Yeah, and those people who are questioning why you're sharing,
Mhm.
they're not your target. They
Right.
will never understand, and nor do they have to. And maybe they do eventually, but that's not why you're speaking. You're speaking for the people who get it instantly. That when you say a thing, you and I now have a heart connection where I go, absolutely. I know how I feel when that happened to me. And that I think is um, one of those amazing connections that humans have. We have this, it's beyond a sixth sense, really, that empathy that we can develop, because it's not just between humans. We have empathy for animals, characters. I mean, there's even an IKEA commercial that makes fun of how we can develop empathy for a lamp. It's just a lamp. You feel sorry for it, you know? And, and yet we can do that as human beings. And I think that comes from that ability for us to step into somebody else's shoes. And the only way to do that is for them to tell us their story. I
Mhm.
can't understand your viewpoint. I can't actually physically come and walk a mile in your shoes, Kyle. But you tell me your story, metaphorically, I can see the world through your eyes, and I can start to gain empathy and understanding with what you went through, because you can tell me so that I can visualize it as though I am standing inside of you.
And the thing is we do what we do not for ourselves, but for other people. Even though it's my story, it's not about me. It's about somebody that's listening to this or they're watching this, so that they know that there's hope out there. And it goes for more than just this situation. There's an entrepreneur out there. Somebody, let's say there's a guy that's back in Houston. Um, his name's Mattress Mac. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but the guy, he started out selling furniture out of the back of his car off of a loan that he got. And now he's built such an empire. I mean, the guy has money. Let me tell you, he gives away furniture to needy families and things like that. But you've got people with stories like that they basically homeless and started out in the back of their car, and before you know it, they've built this big empire. They're rich, got a big family, and now they're helping others. That story could help someone else. We have to get out there, like you said, and just talk.
Well, and recognize that you had alluded to it just moments ago there. You're not telling the story for you. Sometimes there is a cathartic release with it. Sometimes it can be therapeutic to discuss these things. But one of the things that I learned working with Les Brown and the late great Bernie Dorman, both of them had said it in various ways, and I can't remember which one said it this one particular way. But when we're presenting it, it's less about me and more about thee. We
Mhm.
want to, I'm doing this not because I need to glorify myself or because I want to discuss this thing. I am sharing this because I want you to know that this is a safe space for you, that
Mhm.
you and I can share together, that we can grow together. And when you can have that understanding and that empathy towards humanity, then all of the differences melt aside, right? And this is where we find the commonality. It doesn't matter where we differ. We can focus on the differ and never come to an agreement, or we can focus on the commonalities and start to understand each other as human beings. And I think that has really gotten lost over the last, particularly 20 years, but really specifically over the last 4 to 8, where there it's so we're so divisive everywhere. I'm up in Canada and I feel it up here. It's not isolated to the United States. It's not isolated to Canada or UK or Asia, anywhere, right? This is a global issue where we are becoming so divided and split, where things have become so binary. It's black or white. It's this or that, and it's not like they're
Mhm.
the world is not binary.
Sure.
And you can prove that just by looking at any fractal development, which is the most common base building block of life. Everything works in fractals, which means that it's not binary. Things grow out and expand in multiples. So there is never just one way. Even light as we see it is not a single thing. White is not white. White is a blending of every color on the spectrum. And when we start to recognize that there's a massive difference between truth, honesty, fact, all of these things are used interchangeably, and yet they're drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell the truth without being honest, and you can have a fact without being right. So there's just, and then that's the other thing, this need to be right and wrong. I love, one of my favorite things is when somebody can change my mind. Change my mind, because I don't think anybody is right or wrong. I think we just have opinions, and opinions are not facts.
That's right. Opinions aren't facts. But yet that's the way we seem to be living our lives nowadays. Everybody, like I said, everybody's got this dividing line. I've got to be right, and you've got to be wrong, and vice versa. And I've never seen the world as bad as it is right now in my whole 50 some odd years of being on this planet.
And I think that's the curiosity too. Why is it that if you are right, I have to be wrong? It's that binary thought again. We can both be right and wrong at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you can start to embrace that, well, one of the things that I really like to do is just embrace the curiosity of a 5-year-old. Like, look at a situation and just ask why. Why is this a thing? And explore the why without needing to verify a hypothesis or a thesis. Just explore without direction and see where you end up. And I think I hope I have passed that along to my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that it is a philosophy that grows. I can see it. There's pockets of it, Kyle. The good news is there's enough people who are tired of the way that it is right now that we're all looking for a solution.
I think so.
I can honestly say I feel that the momentum and the desire is out there. Whether we're on an upward trajectory or a downward trajectory right now, I don't know, but I do know that there is a desire and momentum building.
I had an actor on my show, and he
never trust those guys.
That he right. Well, he had run for office. I don't remember. I think it was Senate or something. I don't remember, but he's opposite of my political party. But we found so much common ground that those political differences didn't mean anything. And we should all be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, again, with that binary decision, and I think it's a byproduct of, particularly in the States, of how the political system is set up, that it is one or the other. Because again, there is so much nuance to issues that it can't be one or the other. And again, it becomes down to this: well, if you're right, then I somehow have to be wrong, or if I'm right, then you have to be wrong. And I assure you that the Canadian system is not any better. We just have a lot more choices of people who we think are wrong. and I like right now, I feel very disillusioned politically, because there is not a single party that I feel represents me.
Yeah.
I'm just thankful that I don't have to pick one or the other, because at least I have a little bit of option to go, well, I agree most strongly with this one. But even to that end, I struggle greatly, particularly over the last 2 elections, where I have felt, again, disenfranchised with the political landscape, and hoping that there is relief around the corner. And again, I feel that there is momentum moving that way, because you and I are not the only ones to be having this conversation. I think it's being had everywhere, and
Yeah.
not just amongst our shared borders, but around the globe. I think people are a little tired of politics in general, and I think I really do feel that we're moving back to a place of enlightenment and an understanding of humanity. I don't know how quickly we're getting there, and I don't know what the end of it looks like, but I just feel it to be true and have no way of verifying or describing it.
Yeah. Well, like a good marriage, you have to have some compromise. You know, my wife and I, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but we don't have to see eye to eye on everything.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that that little bit of compromise, doing something that the other person wants to do, and you may have not particularly have been interested in it, may open up new doors for you. I can't tell you how many things that I have tried, going certain places and doing certain things that have expanded my life in general. We can
Growth
all be
happens
that way.
outside of your comfort zone.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel we should just try to look for those things we have in common and stop looking for the things that we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and if you can make it a conscious effort to do that, eventually it will become a subconscious effort. And actually, it's one of the things that you had alluded to at the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about, confidence in ourselves. And you had said, even though you have all of these self doubts or, the struggles that you've had, you're still doing this podcast and you're coming out and you're doing it and you're doing it regularly and you're speaking, whether it's through the ministry or all those other opportunities that you have to speak. You're still conquering this fear. And one of the things that I talk about a lot in my seminars, I don't really cover it very much in the book, but in the expanded edition, we will be, is this idea that we gain confidence through competence. And competence actually has a legal definition: adequately qualified, suitably trained, with sufficient experience to perform the task with minimal or no supervision. And if you are breathing, you are qualified to speak. You have a story. And when I say you, Kyle, obviously I mean you, but I mean you, the person who's listening to this right now, who is tuning into the Vibes Network, who is listening for whatever reason, whatever brought you to, particularly to this part in the episode. If you've tuned in to mine and Kyle's 46 minutes of rambling, thank you. And I want you to hear this. You have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes you adequately qualified. Nobody is a better expert or authority on your life than you are. You know it better than anyone else. So who else is better to speak of it? Then the only other thing we have to tackle then is those two other components: suitably trained with sufficient experience to perform the task with minimal or no supervision. Well, I promise you, you've been speaking almost all of your life. So you definitely have the experience of speaking. Now we just need to get you speaking about your life and give you the experience of doing that in front of people. And training is plentiful. You can whether you go to a Toastmasters club or take Carnegie, or you go to see Brian Tracy or myself or any other, Les Brown, any of these people who want to help you share your message. There's resources you can pick. You just find the person who you identify with, who you think can help get you out of that shell. And there's that training. So then you're adequately qualified, suitably trained, and then you just need to do it. You just need to do it over and over and over again until it becomes automatic and it becomes instinctual and a reflex, as opposed to something that you have to consciously think about. And I think if you can do that and tell your story, you have no idea the change that you could impart in the world, especially if you want to make it a conscious effort to, is what Kyle and I have been talking about, start to focus on those connections as opposed to the division. Where are we the same?
Mm-hmm.
Find instead of finding this divisiveness. And if we can work towards that, suddenly all the rest of it becomes superfluous and it just doesn't matter.
And here's the thing. A lot of people, they have those lives where you get up, you go to work, you do your job, come home, eat, take a bath, go to bed, whatever your daily routine is. You get so caught up in that and you think, I'm just an ordinary person with an ordinary life. But you know what? There's something that's happened in your life that you could talk about. I guarantee you, everybody out there has some kind of story that they can tell, and you never know who it's going to affect. That's the point we've been trying to make.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
You don't have to be famous. You can have something in your life that can affect someone else.
Yeah. And I think that's the key too. If you spend your life comparing yourself to other people, you will never find satisfaction in what you're doing. If you can compare yourself to you, that will give you a way better baseline for comparison, for one, and will allow you to see and chart your growth. The person I was even a year ago is drastically different than who I am now. I wouldn't recognize myself 5 years ago. And a decade ago, Tyler Foley, 10 years ago removed, is a shadow, is a ghost. I don't even know that we share the same DNA. And that's how I know that I am finding growth in myself. And I hope, my wish, my goal is that I can, in 5 years, look back at me now and go, oh, congratulations, Mr. Foley. Look at the growth you have made. And I think that comes from not comparing ourselves to others, but comparing ourselves to ourselves. And, perfection is very likely unattainable, but we can get close through repeated efforts. You find that thing that you want to work on and you work on it until you can't get it wrong. And then you find the next thing that you want to work on. And before you know it, through repeated efforts, you will have polished yourself into a fine gemstone where once there was a rough jewel. And I think the more people really recognize and understand that the only person you can control is you. You don't have influence on the external. All you have influence on is the internal and your reaction to the external stimuli. Training yourself to recognize what's internal and external, and training ourselves to control those reactions, so that when I meet a stranger and we get to have a wonderful conversation, that by the end of that conversation, we're looking to exchange phone numbers and be fast friends. And if you can make that a goal of every interaction, just think of how wonderful that world would be. If the next person you met, you approached that introduction of, this is going to be my next best friend.
Yeah. Since I started doing this particular podcast, and I can say that I have reached my goal, although it's a continuous goal, it never ends, which is affecting someone out there. I've gotten those messages thanking me for having so-and-so be on my show, and thank you for that message. I needed to hear that. And when you touch someone else's life, that's more fulfilling than getting an Oscar, And the number two things, like what you said right there, is when I make friends after I've done a show like this. I can't tell you how many people that I still talk to, that I still get messages, text messages or a phone call. I had a guy on my show a few months ago, and I got a text message from a number I didn't recognize. And it says, hey, is there any chance that we could talk? And I had to find out who it was. I'm like, yeah, sure. And here it is. This guy used to play drums for a famous band. and he just wanted to talk to me and wanted to get something off his chest.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell you, as hard as it is, there are people in your life that are just not going to change, or they need something to happen in their lives to help them change. I call it loving them from afar. I'm still here for them. I'll still help them in any way that I can, but I can't hang out with them because they won't change their life.
Mhm.
And I have had to change my circle, and now I have all these positive people that encourage me to do better, that I look up to, that I want to aspire to be. Uh, I can't tell you how that feels when someone like that texts me and wants to get on the phone and talk. Just wanted to get something off their chest. And if I can help someone, that makes me feel good, gives me purpose, knowing that I can help someone else. I wanted to bring up something else, kind of get off of that for a moment. One of the things that the successful people in my circle, and these people are rich, mind you, they always give me this advice: if you got something that you do, give it away. And I'm like, what? I thought you wanted to get paid for that. Give it away. It'll come back to you. I got a friend of mine who's an architect who's very, very, very successful. He had found a website where whatever it is that you do, you post it on there and you do it for free. And he said, I will do your plans for whatever project you have. I'll do it for free. If you know anything about architecture, that kind of stuff takes a lot of time. So he did a project for someone, and the next thing you know, he's getting a call saying, can we hire you to do our next project? And it ended up being a multi-million-dollar project. What's your advice on that?
No, I agree, and it's funny because Andrea and I, who was a guest on your show and who I've worked with, I've had the privilege of getting to meet her finally in person, because we've been working together for over a year, but it's all been virtual because of the world and how it is.
Right.
And I finally got to meet her at an event, and it's one of the things that she said to me. She said she keeps working with me because I'm giving first. And I thought that was one of the greatest things that she could have, the greatest compliment that I could have gotten, because I do believe in that. Like, I don't, I do okay. I'm doing well for myself. And I'm doing a lot of this to give back. It takes a lot, particularly with the amount of podcasts that I do. I've been on over 350 podcasts in the last year. I've been the number one ranked guest on Podmatch for 18 months. Well, in the top 10. And so the aggregate, the top rated guest on Podmatch for the last 18 months. And it's exhausting, to be honest. Like, there's a lot that goes into doing that, but I feel that it's my duty, because this is an easy way for me to encourage people to tell their story, to let them know that they have greatness within them, to step up, to provide some insight to what I'm doing. And I would agree with your friend. If you have something that you do well, give it away. The universe is this amazing resonant sounding board that amplifies what you put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that from dozens and dozens of amazing, successful men. But the one who really brought it home for me was Bernie Dorman before he passed away. He was the president of CEO Space, phenomenal networking group, one of the top rated business accelerator seminars in the world. And he had a vision for that thing. And he was constantly giving. Even the fact that I was down at the seminar, he met me in Houston while I was speaking at an event, and he invited me to be one of his, they called them faculty members, anybody who came and taught at a CEO Space event. They referred to them as faculty. And Bernie didn't know me from Adam. And he literally had met me just the once, and, got me down to Houston, or Dallas. We were in Dallas. He got me down to Dallas, met me in Houston, brought me down to Dallas. And I was, I'm forever grateful to him for that lesson. And it was one of the things that he said too, like if you really want to have influence and power, stop being worried about the financial return on it. It's only one of many metrics to gauge your wealth and your success. And when you start being grateful for all of those opportunities, and the dollar figure doesn't matter, it's amazing how quickly that dollar figure grows. When you don't care about the money and people can see that you don't care about the money, they can't give it to you fast enough. It's amazing. But the key to it is to be giving it's that relationship. You got to be giving something away for free, and a lot away for free. And it can't be a stupid clickbait thing too. Like, here's my 7-page PDF. I have a 7-page PDF. Nobody downloads the damn thing ever. We could prompt it right now. We could tell people, go download the method, and they'll be like, oh yeah, and they will not. I tell them that I speak directly to them. I say, you have a message, you have a story that's going to change them. They may want to reach out to me. And if they don't want to reach out to me, they'll say, hey, I heard this message from somebody else, and maybe you should look it up. The number of referrals and references I've gotten by just providing value and not worrying about what the return is, because I know that there is a return. Always, always, always. The universe amplifies what you put out there. You're going to be putting out a whole bunch of crap, including the 7-page PDF. What do you think you're going to get back? Right? You put out true value in the world. You'd be worried more about providing value to others than what they're providing to you. And the universe does reward. It does reward in a big way.
Yeah, it does. Law of attraction.
Mm-hmm. Done correctly, though. Law of attraction
Yes.
works if you're actually. You can't just sit on your couch and hope to have 6-pack abs. You still need to do sit-ups.
You still have to put the effort in.
You have to put the effort in.
Wow. And what did you say the name of your book was?
The Power to Speak Naked. How to speak with confidence, communicate effectively, and win your audience. #1 best-selling book, and available in bookstores everywhere.
I was going to get naked, but I don't want to scare off my audience.
I have done it once for charity, and I would do it again if asked. But yeah, it's not a commonplace thing for me.
I was hosting a comedy night on my Facebook page, and so I have all these comedians on, and mind you, all of us have dad bods, and some of us worse than others. And eventually we all talked ourselves into taking our shirts off for this comedy thing. I was trying to help these guys out and earn some money for them, because it was during the first part of the pandemic and they weren't able to work. It's like, yeah, maybe we can do that and people will donate. Now, you know how embarrassing that is to take your shirt off when you have a body like mine for charity? But we didn't get hardly nothing, man. That's sad.
Then Kyle, we got to do it again and make it worth your while. And I would be embarrassed. The number of people who walk around. Again, it becomes that comparative thing. Like, I can look at all the guys who are just muscled out beyond anything that I have achieved in my life and go, ugh. Or I can look at myself and go, not too bad. I'm down 5 pounds from what I was last year, or I'm up 5 pounds in my case, because that's what I wanted. Because I want to put on a little bit of bulk. I'm a small guy, man. I am 5'7", 5'7.5", about 130, 135 pounds. When I get up to like 140, I like celebrate. I'm like, woohoo, look at me, right? But it's how you feel inside of this meat bag we reside in that really is the true thing. I would rather be slightly overweight and thoroughly happy with my life than to be, in this peak physical specimen and miserable because I was in the gym 12 hours a day.
True. It's true.
The opposite's true. The opposite is true as well, right? I would want to be just slightly overweight and completely obese and feel miserable about the body that I was stuck in because of where I was and what I was doing. There is no, again, there's no right or wrong. It is not black or white. The key is how I feel inside of myself and not what I look like on the outside.
Well, perspective. That there's a picture that was put out. I think it was on Facebook. I don't remember, but at one angle, you see this guy getting out of a limo, and I don't remember, he was somebody famous, and the way his hand was, it looks like he was flipping people off. But when you look at the other way, it was somehow he was holding something, or he was reaching for something. I don't remember, but when you look at it from the other direction, you could see he really wasn't flipping people off. It's all about the perspective.
It is. It is.
Which we need to keep in mind. That car that comes zooming past you on the highway, you think, well, the first thing in your mind is this idiot, stupid driver, but maybe he's rushing to the hospital, or there's some kind of emergency going on. We don't know. And we need to stop and think about these things. I'm guilty. I can't tell you how many times I've done it. I'm not a perfect person. I fall all the time, but we still need to strive.
George Carlin, I think, said it best, right? The people who are driving faster than you on the highway are maniacs, and the people who are driving slower than you on the highway are idiots. And yet, at some point, we are both an idiot and a maniac because we're driving faster than somebody and driving slower than somebody else. And as you had said, it's all about perspective, like where are we at within, and again, this is why it's not black and white. There is a spectrum. There is a spectrum out there. And it's not even shades of gray. We live in a color world. Billions of possibilities when it comes to color combinations. And to try and narrow it down to a binary or some kind of grayscale interaction is not doing the world justice. Open your eyes, see the color, explore what's inside of your senses, and get outside of the color boundaries too. Explore those senses and the things that we can't even perceive, and allow your heart to open up to some of those possibilities. You'd be amazed at the change that you can make in the world.
That's right. I tell the story all the time how I go to the grocery store and I try to avoid those self-checkout things. I hate those things. I'll even wait that extra 5-10 minutes just to be in line so I can interact with a human being. And I will tell some goofy joke or something, and just to try to make this person smile, because how many people have cussed them out during the day, or just been awful to them, and you try to make them smile, and that changes everything for them. They always will ask me, do you want your milk in a bag? And I'm like, no, keep it in the jug. It's a lot less messy. Some get it and some look at me like, are you a moron?
I think it's funny. So what my big takeaways from this are, Kyle, that we need to look for more interactions amongst each other, and you and I need to do a charity event where we're taking our shirts off. That's what I got out of this episode.
That's as far as I'll go, though, is taking the shirt off.
let me handle the rest.
You can have the rest.
I have no problem disappointing a room full of people.
Do you have a website?
Oh, I do, and I'd be my joy and my pleasure to share it with everybody. But before we have them hop over to my site, they're already on yours, Kyle. Mm-hmm. So if they're enjoying this conversation, other conversations that you've had, if they enjoy the content that you're putting out, I would encourage your listeners right now, because they're already listening to this on their favorite platform on their device. So hit pause, give Kyle a 5-star review, and be specific. Don't just, click the the stars. That's the lazy review. Give a reason. What was an episode that you liked? What about Kyle's style do you like? What about the show brings you back time and time again? Why are you listening repeatedly? And if you can do me that favor and let Kyle know what you like about the show, then as a thank you from me, I would encourage you to come over to SeanTylerFoley.com. Sean is spelled the proper Irish way. SeanTylerFoley.com, and say Tyler sent you. If you come through there, we have an invitation for you to join my Facebook group called Endless Stages, and I go live and do trainings in that space for anybody to be able to interact and get an understanding of what I do at no cost. I will also give you a free PDF download of my book, The Power to Speak Naked, so that you have the ability to see it without having to invest any money into it. And we also give you access to my Drop the Mic program, which is an online self-directed learning. So again, gives you a taste of what it is that I do, and all for free, because I practice what I preach. And I really do believe that we should be giving this stuff away and let people have a relationship with us. So if that interests you, please do come over to SeanTylerFoley.com if you want to strengthen your message, strengthen your storytelling, learn to overcome some of these fears around public judgment and being a better presenter and speaking in public. But only please do that if you've given Kyle a 5-star review. I would ask, as a piece of integrity, and because you found out about me through his platform, that if you're going to come over to my website, reward his website first, and do that by giving him a 5-star review.
Thank you for that endorsement. I appreciate that. And if there's something that you don't like, let me know. The criticism just makes me want to be a better person, and I want to make this the best for you. So anything that you see needs improvement, or you have a suggestion, let me know. I want to be here for you. And are you Irish, by the way?
Absolutely. Yes.
Do you know why they only put 239 beans in Irish stew?
No, why?
Because one more'd be too farty.
Oh, tis a right good joke. I like it.
I had to do my dad joke.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that will make it into my repertoire now. So I appreciate that, Kyle. Thank you.
You're welcome. You can use that. I give it to you for free. Is there any other social media that you have out there?
Oh yeah, we're on all the socials: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. People can find me. I make it easy because I use my whole name, and not a lot of people are in that full combination. And all they have to do is enter me into Google. Just Google Tyler Foley or Sean Tyler Foley, and I'm going to be the first 4 pages guaranteed.
Well, I encourage you to check that out, and let's keep this going. Let's help each other out. And if you have a message, you feel like you want to share it, let me know. I would love to have you on the show. But we have to end this now, and I thank you so much for you coming on and spending your time with me. I want to thank all of you out there. If you are new to the show, please hit that subscribe button, and I hope you'll come back. Let others know. Bring them here. Somebody needs a message, and hopefully we can get that message to them. And if you were one of my regulars, you know how much I appreciate you. Because of you, I get to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network